Members of the Common Council, Mr. Mayor, my name is Ray Galawacki. I live at 6055 South Crosswinds Drive, Unit 2. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Cudahy. I'm 83 years old. I spent 68 of those years at 3900 East Pulaski Avenue. Members of the council, in 1996, there was a development put in on College Avenue that covered 60 acres. When that property was being talked about, the neighborhood there, the folks from Ramsey, those areas, were all upset about what that was going to do to their neighborhood. Somewhere, somebody got a hold of a figure that 125 kids were going to be added to the school district from that 60 acres. You know how many came out of that school district, to the school district? I don't know, 25. The circumstances of concern with regard to traffic, I would like to ask any one of these folks that are concerned from the area of where the church is now located. Come over to Crosswinds Drive, Henry Avenue, Buckhorn. There are units there called Cudahy Connection, very concerned about what it was going to do to local traffic. They're there now a couple of years and nothing is said. The idea that these folks have of going ahead and putting in underground parking, that's fantastic. That's a big plus. The neighborhood, I think, could use a bright spot, and this could very well be that bright spot. It could be good for the whole area. I want to tell you, I live in an area, the condo living that I have, I live in Crosswinds. It has 58 units. Of the 58 units, 2 are people from Cudahy originally. 56 are from out of town. I've lived there now 16 years. And to my amazement, when we have get-togethers, the people comment about what a hell of a secret Cudahy is. Now that's a plus and a minus. It's good for us, but other people are feeling that they're being kept out. Great parks, great community. I really think that these kinds of things, we are not loaded with apartment houses. We are not. You take a look at what happened and the upset that came when Williamstown Bay was being talked about, the 3 buildings on Ramsey Avenue on the west side of the tracks. The same complaints and all kinds of things. The city's going to go to hell in a handbasket. When Evergreen Square was being considered, Washington Square. What's wrong with those properties? They provided a need. Seniors are there. They're no burden to the community. I think, yes, we need answers as to how this is going to progress, but the sad thing here in all of this stuff, nothing happens until they run through these things and then you go looking for money. But that's the process. Now we can get frightened to all kinds of things in anticipation of what might this do. But I'll tell you one thing, it won't be a harm. It won't be a harm. Please consider what these folks, the developers, are offering. make sure that we're getting the best that we can get. Cudahy is Cudahy. We have to offer a cross-section of things to people. I think this would be good for the city, and it would be good for the South Side. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Popala, Business Manager Popala, can you come forward, please? You didn't know that I was going to put you on the spot tonight, Jim. Good evening, sir. Thank you for coming in tonight. As a representative of the school district, which you may have not known that you were going to be called to service tonight, but as a member of the community, Jim, thank you for being here.
I kept my suit on, so.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Again, that's a good relationship we have between the city and the school district. I'll owe you one. Is that fair enough?
Sure.
Okay.
And I just want to take this opportunity, obviously Jim Popala, I think you all know me. Speaking on behalf of the district, I think that there's just some information that we want to present to the members so that you understand where we are coming from.
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, we do not understand yet, or actually haven't identified any impact that there might be to the schools themselves as a result of the proposed development. We don't know the demographics. I've heard a little bit more tonight about the proposed demographics of the new residents, so that certainly could have some impact on our schools. I think to address the question that the lady had a couple of speakers ago regarding Kosciuszko, and in fact any of our elementary schools, as you may or may not know, we are planning on moving our 6th grade students from the elementary schools to the middle school. So the good news is that we'll be freeing up 1 or 2 sections of classroom space in our elementary schools for any potential increase that there might be as a result of new development. Obviously, the downside is we're adding another 185 kids to the middle school, and so that will increase some of the challenges that we have there at the middle school for providing education at that facility. But in terms of our location at Kosciuszko or Lincoln, which would be the other school right now in those current boundaries, we do not expect to be overwhelmed with students, and apparently hearing from the developer that we're not looking to add, as Mayor Kowalski had said, 125 students. We're not expecting that with the size of the development there. What we do want to make sure that you're aware of is that if there is an imbalance created because of the new residents that are in those locations, we may have to redraw the boundaries between the home schools, moving the boundaries around to accommodate, especially 2 of our schools have SAGE classification, so that we have to maintain a student to teacher ratio of 18:1. So if that happens, we have to move boundaries to accommodate what physically we can accommodate in each of the schools, but it's way too early to even look at that. 2 other things that I think would just be of note. One is, and I know that was discussed a little bit, about the traffic pattern on Hammond Avenue, and that is a concern for the district because we do have tight spaces, plowing, parking. A lot of our staff parks on Hammond, actually on both sides, and with the loss of that section of the street that is not being used now, and we can use it for some day parking, that would be problematic, as well as that entrance coming in on Hammond. I was hoping before I saw the plans that the entrance might be on Underwood, and that would solve a lot of my concern personally. But that's something that I'm sure that the traffic and safety and everybody will be working together to resolve. The last thing is just the transiency issue that we face in our public schools, and that is something that we've always been tuned in very closely to, and we really feel that there's a need to try to reduce the transiency in our community, and I guess however you can accomplish that, we would certainly want to work with you on that. We found that transiency and education don't always work the best together.
2 questions, Director Popala. Number 1, is Kosciuszko still the 2nd largest when it comes to enrollment within the district? As far as numbers go, I know that Lincoln has always been first. I know that General Mitchell years ago used to be second, but has Kazi overtaken General Mitchell consistently?
Right now I have, and I did bring those numbers, so.
Thank you.
Lincoln is the largest with 332 students. Kosciuszko is second with 284 students.
Okay. Do you have General Mitchell's number, just out of curiosity?
General Mitchell is at 274.
Okay, and in years past?
Parkview is actually down to 273.
Okay. In your estimation, over the past several years, more of the enrollment has come into Kosciuszko versus General Mitchell, if you will. Like when our kids were younger at General Mitchell, we were always around 340 to 360.
Correct.
But as our area where you and I personally live in has gone through transition, there are more younger families that have moved to the second district, if you will, that have caused Kosci's enrollment to go up. Is that a true statement?
Yes.
Okay, the next question would be, let's just say for sake of example that this development doesn't go through, and the housing trends continue here in Cudahy, that more younger families are moving into that second district. Wouldn't you have to possibly redistrict your homeschool boundaries, if you will? And I don't mean as homeschool, I mean that, you know, moving the Lincoln line, moving the Jones line, if you will, because of the population moving into a particular area.
And we've done that over the years as well. So yes, it's not an unusual thing. It's just based on where the population is residing. Absolutely.
Okay, because one of the other things that the council has seen in the 2011, 2012, 2013 annual report from the public health officer is where we have a large segment of our community, which is older and greater, if you will. We are also very high in parents that have children in the age of 5 and under. So we know that years to come in our community, we're going to have a larger influx within our schools, which again, even if this development didn't go forward, may take you to shift some of these boundaries when it comes to, hopefully again, a larger number of residents with younger kids entering the district. Okay. All right. Any other questions of the council of Mr. Popala as the business director? And on behalf of the school?
Well, we got one, Jones has got an imbalance over there, we always got room there. You only have one floor going, don't you?
Jones is our smallest school. And it's
Yes.
difficult
Way under-
with Jones,
way under-
obviously.
way under there.
Yeah, right
Way
now,
under there.
right now we have our boundary for Jones just several blocks away from Kazi. And so the only way to attract more, I mean, if the development was in the home school for Jones area, that would not be a problem at all, because we do have a lot of.
You got a lot of space there, yes.
Yeah.
You could fill it up a little bit so we wouldn't have a big heat bill for nothing.
We probably have to move the boundary up to like right across the street from Kazi.
Well, we've been doing that for years, I've been around a long time doing it too, they've been moving the boundaries all over the place.
Yep.
General Mitchell used to be the #1 way back in the '70s, remember that's what all around there?
I remember that
We had
well.
half the problems we got now,
Yep.
with the parking and everything else. We had
That's
half
how,
the problems.
that's how communities change. Mr. Warner, I believe you had a question of Director Popala.
Mark, I just want to make a comment, I didn't comment on it before. 3 projects that we've done over the years, a 91 unit project out in Sussex, that was 28 3-bedrooms and all the rest were 2-bedrooms. A 128 units in Midland, Michigan, that was 50% 3-bedrooms and 50% 2-bedrooms. And our 72 unit project in Racine that is half 2-bedrooms and half 3-bedrooms. All 3 of those, we did studies on the number of kids that actually went into a school system, and it averaged between 1.2 and 1.4, spread out fairly evenly between kindergarten through 12th grade. And there were more kids in the project, but you know, we're talking about kids that were in kindergarten or not preschool. People who moved in preschool and left, or people with older kids. So it averaged between 1, and those are with heavy concentration of 50% 2s, 50% 3s, spread out pretty evenly. So it was about 1.2, 1.4. This particular project, we're not marketing towards bigger families, we'd expect it to be less, but you know, those 3 we had done studies on for whatever it's worth. They weren't scientific, they were managers checked, this is how many are in, and you know, that's the information we had.
One last thing I forgot to mention that was that I had done a study on our free and reduced population. Because I know the council sometimes asks about that, and currently we are sitting at just under 60% of our students in our community schools are qualifying for the school National School Lunch Program free or reduced status. So that means we have about 40% that are the private paid people, and I guess that you should just be aware of that as well, that our current population is very heavily skewed that way. In fact, I think we're right behind Milwaukee at 82%, and Racine at 63.1%, and then we're next in our local demographics.
I was surprised to learn over the weekend that Delafield is almost 80% free and reduced lunch.
Some of the rural communities do have more challenges that way as well.
Right, okay. Any other questions of Director Popal? All right, thank you, sir. Is there anybody else who would wish to speak to the common council? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, my name is Robert Fliss. I live at 3814 East Underwood. That's like Underwood across the street from this unit, 3 doors to the east. This has been presented very well. It looks like it's a much more well thought out project than I originally had the impression of. But I still maintain some concerns that have to do with its size. We're replacing, or considering here to replace, an architectural artifact with a dense population unit. And I think that's the biggest concern that I'm hearing from the people who are living right around the area. I think the replacement is a good idea. I think something on a smaller scale would be a good idea. I understand that, you know, cost-benefit problems because the church exists there. But nevertheless, an independent study might help arrive at what is more suitable, or what's the best kind of analysis, since if we look around on the horizon, there is nothing like this, you know, anywhere around that we can see in all of our greater community around here. We're plunking this down here, as well designed as it is, sir. And so we need to look at that and think more carefully and a bit more independently about its advisability. And one thing, Mr. Mayor, you did speak about, you know, where do kids play and that sort of thing. I was thinking of this in a little bit different way. You addressed some of the open space that's up in the building, and that reassured me about that there's space where families can spend and all that sort of thing. But what I was thinking of had more to do with, my lot is 30 feet by 120 feet, so we put my house in the middle. I've got a certain amount of square footage of greenery that I can stand on, and that the residents in my house can stand on. So there's a certain amount of just square footage that it represents space for us that's green. How much green square footage is there per person in here? And I'm not like, I'm curious.
You're talking about at the first floor level, if you will, on the back side.
On the ground level. So as we go around here outside, how much green space is there? So if everybody stood out there, how would that compare to what everybody else around is expecting in the typical neighborhood here? I mean, it's another kind of measure of density impact.
Mr. Fliss, that's a very good question. Again, you talk about a 30-foot lot, you've got a 20-foot house with 5-foot setbacks on each side, could potentially put it very close to a neighboring house. You're right. You have a small frontage on the house. I presume you have a 1 or 2 car garage?
I don't even have a garage.
Oh, okay. But again, if you had a garage, let's just say a single family, or, you know, a single car garage, 20 by, 16, something like that, you would still have about 30 foot to the house, depending upon the size of the square footage of your house, for that green space in the back, if you will.
Yeah.
Typical normal house in a 30-foot lot, would that be a pretty good comparison to your property?
That would be about my guess,
Right,
without
okay.
basing it off.
And Mr. Lerner, if you can go down to the first floor level and just kind of talk about, obviously again, the building is going to be on a tight 1 acre site, but it's not going to be where it's abutting up to every single property line, if you will.
No, just out here, just you guys, either.
That, you can address Mr.
Okay.
Plessis, and the audience can.
Happy to, just want to make sure who you want to, as you look at the site, and obviously, you people all know what's there right now. There's not a lot of green space there now. As I mentioned earlier, today as developers, we have to address setbacks, green, environmentals, and especially like today, things like rainwater, how do we solve all these things? And that's all part of I don't know if you probably didn't see those of you that didn't see what I was showing the board before, the underground parking itself takes up this entire block here. And you can see that above the underground parking on our Span Creek deck will be a lot of this green area where we'll develop the patios and the rain gardens and the things like that that we need to, as a developer, we have to address the requirements of, you know, the city on stormwater, and as Mary Jo told us, the MMSD, and everybody that has a say today in how we deal with this stuff. So those things are way up on top of our list. So we have a fair amount of green area considering the amount of density. You made a comment, I wouldn't have the slightest idea. Do we have more green area per person than you?
And I wouldn't
I've never
expect,
been
I wouldn't expect you to think
Yeah.
of that off the cuff.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
a-
think it might be a measure.
Yeah,
It
it's-
might be a measure to take a look at to make some kind of.
We like green. I mean, I mean, everybody here and I may never agree on much, but I think we can all agree we all like green. So we like to create as much as we can, depending on the type of development we're doing and following the rules that, you know, that we're given to follow, so.
Yeah, and so I think it's a pretty elaborate step for everybody who's immediately in the area. So the idea of looking at it more independently simply has to do with assuring that this is the best kind of step to move forward. And I hope we wouldn't hire the most expensive study in the world to try and pull that off. In other words, if you know, some kind of analysis that would reassure us going forward. But again, the size of the rectangle that is being set down here in place of an architectural object, all right, it's not the same. It doesn't matter that it's 77 feet tall or 78, it doesn't matter. You're taking away an architectural object, could just be just a big statue, which is basically what it's become. And you're putting in living, breathing, full of people coming and going and everything like this. So it's reasonable that people react, and very intelligent support as well for the project. So like I said, I appreciate your presentation because it makes it much more easy to consider. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Is there anybody else who would wish to speak to the common council? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Jerry Winkleski, 3717 East Carpenter Avenue. I belonged to that church for, since 1953 or thereabouts. But since it closed in 1999 or 2000, to watch it deteriorate like it has been in the last years, we've had different people looking at it to buy it, but when they look at the repair that it needs, they back away. And working with Project Concern, I've been there a number of times and been in the church a number of times. And I think something like this would definitely be a good thing for it. Because you can't let a building go 15 years and not do anything to it and expect it to be like it was. It's not going to happen that way. You can't let your house go that long. Why let that go? So I think that this would definitely be a good fit for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else? Ma'am, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Stacy Lorenzo and I live at 3716 East Underwood Ave. I'm a homeowner there. I've lived in Cudahy my whole life. I moved out of Cudahy for about a year when I was 19. Came back here and bought a house here.
Welcome back.
Well, I've lived in my home for 15 years, which my home is 110 years old. It's been one of the oldest houses on that block. So is he saying that the underground parking is gonna be like the whole block, on the side where the church is? He's gonna have underground parking there? Like, what is that gonna do to the foundation and stuff of our old homes there? Because a lot of those homes are, you know, close to 100 years old. Like, what is that gonna do? And also, like I said, I chose Cudahy. I chose a quiet, peaceful neighborhood to raise my kids close to the school. You know, I don't have a lot of money myself. This is why we come to small communities like this where we're gonna, you know, our neighbors we all hang out. We all watch out for each other. something like this, we're not gonna know anybody who's there. I'm all for development and growth and, you know, all the proposed projects that are, you know, on the main roads and the main, you know, the places where it's commercial zoning areas and things like that, but just to put something like this smack dab in the middle of an area where I just started letting my 9-year-old go off of the block. Do you think I want her to go off of the block and go hang out over here? I don't see this as a good idea for our children who play or our animals out there. Do we have to put up fences around our houses? Like, I just really don't think that this is a good idea. And where are all these kids that do move in there, whether it's 20 kids, 30 kids, where are they gonna play? Where are they gonna go? Yeah, they can go to Pulaski Park. Pulaski Park's not that big. So what, we're all gonna send them to the schoolyard to play over at Kazi, or we're gonna send them to the park? It's ridiculous, and that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the common council come forward? We'll take the lady, and then I saw an arm in the back. I'll go to the back of the room after we go here.
Hi, my name is Jane Fliss. I'm Bob's wife. I live at 3814 East Underwood Avenue. The population and density proposed will undermine the safety and pride of ownership that is key to our Generations of Pride motto. We moved to Cudahy 19 years ago as a haven from crime in our previous River West neighborhood in Milwaukee. When we lived in River West, police were searching for a murder weapon in our backyard. Not to say that this is going to happen, however, instead of leaves, we raked garbage from our yard. The residents in the area were not vested in the community. There were fewer homeowners than there were rentals, and people did not care. As a developer has looked at the foundation of the Nativity of the Lord site, has a developer looked at the structure of the community as well? Increased stress on the school system, the police force, the safety of the population in our area, and not just for the Underwood area, Kosciuszko community, for the whole area of Cudahy. That's why I got up here to say what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe someone in the back, and then we'll come up to the front.
Okay. Don't mind me, I'm a little nervous.
That's
I'm not
okay.
good at public speaking. I live at 3807 East Underwood. My name is Mary Luz, and I live there with my partner, Brad Johnson. We bought the home about 4 years ago. I've never lived in Cudahy before that time. I am from Washington County. He's from Racine County. We chose Cudahy and the specific area that we live in because of its tranquil, really great neighbors. We know everybody around us. We all help each other out, whether it's snow blowing or shoveling or whatever. We also have 2 stories on our house. So we have a really nice porch in the back that when we look out, we actually look right at the church. And as much as it's nothing's going on with that area, it is really tranquil to look at. My concern would be to see such a large structural piece take over such a nice, calming area that we have. It sounds like a lot of the families that live there, a lot of people that, I know that I've spoken to my neighbors, one thing that they're concerned about is just having a bunch of people that we don't necessarily know, changing the environment of our neighborhood, changing the feeling of our neighborhood. I think that for this particular, I'm all about going forward and doing great things for Cudahy. I work directly in Cudahy. I work directly with people that come to the office and live in Cudahy. For this particular proposal, I don't think that we should be rezoning for it. I don't think that it's something that is going to benefit the area that I live in. I think that that church in that area could be used for something to really blossom where we live and to really enhance it and to really give back to the community. I find that this is not going to give back, it's going to take away. It's going to take away from the feel, it's going to take away from just parking. I mean that's really trivial. It's parking, we can always walk, but it's nice to be able to come home after a long day, drive up, not have to deal with a bunch of hustle bustle, get out of your car, park where you need to park, and just, you know, relax. The noise part of it's another concern of mine. What kind of noise pollution is this going to add to that area? We're talking about patios that everybody's going to have on the different areas. We're talking about a possible on top of roof sort of thing. I'm concerned about, you know, extra, all of that extra that kind of comes with it. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Then we're going to go to the gentleman in the front here, and then I see a hand in the back, so let's call him to the front here first.
Hello, and thank you for listening. My name is Sean Hubach. I live at 3847 Underwood Avenue. Me and my wife, we've been living at our house for the past 8 years. And we've been wondering over the past couple of years what's going to happen with that church. So this is a very intriguing idea. There's a lot I like about it, but the concerns I'm going to raise is where I live, I own a duplex, upper and lower, and me and my wife and our 2-year-old daughter live in the lower unit. We rent out the upper unit. The last time we had to rent out our unit, it sat empty for 3 months, specifically because we go through a fairly decent process of finding renters. We want people who are going to be good for us and who are going to be good for the neighborhood. And that's been a really challenging thing to find. Could look at probably police records for a place across the street from me and find out how many times the cops have been there at 2 in the morning for other renters that have been there, that it's just been craziness that's been going on. That we've been woken up, excuse me, at 2 in the morning because of this. And I see this as being a problem because there are a lot of places in the neighborhood that are rental units. A lot of them are owner occupied, a lot of them are not. So, on the one hand, I'm hoping that like creates like with this. That having something like this in the neighborhood will help to revitalize it, to help bring in more and more people who really want to take care of the neighborhood, more and more people who aren't getting the cops called at 2 in the morning. I'm tired of that. On the other hand, I have concerns because I hear very vague ideas from you as far as how you're going to market that. It's just we're just going to market that. So that's something that I would like a focus on, is exactly how is that going to be marketed? What kind of a plan are we going to come to as far as how are we going to get these people in here? And what I don't want is this place goes up, and then 3 years from now, we lose focus of all that. And now we're just filled with a lot of more people that are getting the cops called at 2 in the morning. So thank you.
Thank you. I believe there was a hand up in the back. Well, was that a young lady back there? Ladies first.
Hi, my name is Laura Saar, and I'm at 3812 East Botsford Avenue. So I am not directly impacted by this program, and by the way, that was a nice presentation. I I think one of the issues, obviously, is fear of the unknown. And, you know, I concur with the gentleman that just spoke, is that I think the residents, aside from the, you know, aside from the concern with respect to congestion, with respect to the building structure itself, replacing, you know, replacing the church, there is this fear of who are my next door neighbors going to be? And I guess I had a question. I know that the issue of low-income housing has been, you know, it's said that this is not low-income housing. But I'm wondering exactly what this program is. Is this under the Tax Reform Act of 1986, where you have to meet certain requirements to have tax credits? So those requirements, at least from what I'm seeing, is that at least 20% of the units must be occupied by tenants earning below 50% of the area median gross income, or at least 40% of the units must be occupied by tenants earning below 60% of the area median gross income. So although we aren't calling it low-income housing, it is housing for individuals that have low incomes. So I understand that we like growth, but my question is, if there is an income restriction on individuals that are moving into this area, what is truly the benefit to the area businesses from these individuals that are moving in, because they do have lower incomes? Also, what is the drain on our school system? So if we have individuals that are moving in that can only meet a minimum income threshold to qualify, are we going to be draining some of our school system as far as qualifying for the free lunch? And is the city prepared to handle that? Again, I'm not directly impacted. There's a lot of different studies out there regarding low-income housing. You know, I think that many of the prior studies had said, oh, property values are gonna decrease, you know, it's gonna be horrible. There have been some more recent studies where that hasn't been the case. There have been, but from what I've seen, there's a lot of conflicting information. And that's scary, because it doesn't seem like there's a good analysis as to the probability as to whether or not this is going to be successful. I mean, it seems like it's a shot in the dark. And I think that the residents do have valid concerns. I agree that this is potentially a good idea. I agree that it could potentially be pretty bad. And I guess I would like to see some additional independent studies done. I think that it's a huge project. A lot of money is going to be spent, and I think it deserves further investigation. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, Jim Williamson, 3933 East Adams Avenue, here at Cudahy. I am a parishioner of the Nativity of the Lord Parish for the past 14 years, since its inception. I also been a resident of the city of Cudahy in 71 of my 73 years. And I was baptized at Holy Family, grew up in St. Joe's, married a beautiful gal from St. Fred's, so I think I've got it covered. In addition, I've been on the council at Nativity for a number of years, and in the last few years, I've been the trustee treasurer of the parish, one of the trustees. And the parish has diligently tried to sell that property for the past 14 years. We've had 2 different brokers that have worked with us. We've had any number of groups come through. We thought that we would be able to sell that as a church to some group. And we've had a number of groups come through. Not one of those have ever worked out. The closest we came was getting an offer initially, and they never got funded. Matter of fact, barely ever got back to us. That's as close as we've come to being able to sell that property. What we have here is a project that I wouldn't have expected initially, but on that parcel of land, if you want to compare, if you're talking high density here, too many people, let's go to the other end and say we put 5 single-family dwellings on that site. I don't know whether you get that in an acre or not. I don't know, let's say 5. Buying that property, tearing down that building, and building $170,000 homes on there is not feasible, and that's why there's no developer in the universe that has ever come here and proposed that. It costs so much to make the land ready that you can't build a house that would fit that neighborhood and have anybody make any money. You know, you're not gonna have a $170,000 home on something you paid $250,000 for to get ready so that they can build that house. So what we have here, I think, is the fact that we should be able to proceed with this thing. If you want to look, Mary, you and I are second district people. Yeah. Holy Family Church, the original wood building, was built about 115 years ago. The current building was built in 1930. 115 years, that parcel of land has been tax exempt. And the city has not made 1 red cent off of that parcel. Not making money, but true revenue so we could support the city. We put this on there, we are going to make it private. We are going to put it on the tax rolls. And we are going to be able to have additional revenue for the citizens of our district and for the rest of you aldermen, for the rest of the city. Isn't that what we want to do with the little land that we have left? There's no way, this is the only kind of project that would be economically and viable on that parcel. Do we wish there was a church there? Maybe so. I mean, do we wish we could do something else? Maybe so. But this here is a good idea, and since I've seen this for the first time today, I think it'll be tremendous for the neighborhood, and I would strongly recommend that you approve the zoning switch.
To your point, Mr. Williamson, on the number of single-family houses on the 1 acre site, if you were to take that site and use a normal city of Cudahy size lot, like a 60 by 120 lot, on that little over 1 acre site, you get 6 parcels, 6 houses on that property. If you do the math, the current asking price of the Archdiocese is $400,000. If the cost of removal of that building is anywhere, and again, these aren't scientific numbers, but these are numbers that have been thrown around by developers. The cost to clear that land is anywhere from $700,000 to $1 million. If you do the math and put those numbers together, that's $1.1 to $1.4 million for that acre site. If you divide that back into 6 single-family lots, you find me a bank that would be willing to finance a single-family lot in Cudahy where the value of the land was paid for in an amount of $150,000 to $200,000 just for the land. Land in Whitefish Bay doesn't even go for that much. The number just doesn't work. That's why a single-family developer won't touch the site. It has been looked at. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the Common Council? Yes, sir, in the back, please come forward. And then there was a gentleman over here, I believe. We'll go there next. Thank you.
Hi, guys. Good evening, everybody. My name is Adam Nowoshinsky. I'm sure you can guess the spelling because you're all from the area, so figure it out. It's like Bartosiewicz. Good Polish and German name. There we go. SK or SKY, right?
There we go.
But I live at 3808 East Morris Avenue. My family and I, about 7 years ago, decided to make a $200,000 plus investment in our property and entirely retool our home and add on because we love the area, we love the city. That was our church growing up. My whole family went to that church, we went to that school in some cases. Part of the issue we've had with the building sitting empty is that we built this beautiful home and renovated. It's a blight to the neighborhood. And I'm all about if someone cannot do something with it under the current zoning, and my family, we're somewhat divided. We're not all in favor of, a huge development in that spot. And I have to say, looking at the picture tonight, the renderings, it's not terribly attractive or terribly unattractive. I think it needs some refinement. I mean, I would be real nitpicky to say that if you expect my neighbors, who I'm not directly facing it, but I'll look at it from my backyard, which I spent about $10,000 to landscape, this is what I'm going to be looking up at on a summer's night, especially if it has exterior illumination. So I would expect the building to have proper downlighting, a lot of green elements, planting of large trees from inception of the property being inhabited, instead of what a lot of developers tend to do, which is they go to like a mega discount nursery equivalent, find a bunch of small stuff, then get real cheap and just throw it around the building, and if it lives, it lives, if it dies, it dies. So I would have an expectation, as would most of the people who live in my home, of maintenance. Now, I like the idea that it's privately owned and that the city would expect it to be maintained, and I know all of us, if this goes up in our neighborhood, we're going to expect this to be a good-looking building for a long time. I would ask you to maybe consider finding a way to make it something that fits in the neighborhood a little bit better. If you drive around our neighborhoods, you will find throughout that whole area, there's nothing that really resembles something quite this modern in its exterior. So I think appearance is going to be an important thing for you as the council to win people over to accept it and not lose residents or lose people's favor with the council or with the city. The other thing I think it's important for the people that are here tonight as neighbors to consider is that there is the option that we talked about where someone could come and tear the building down, but it's very expensive to do, to make townhomes or to make private residences. But you'd consider, look at what some of the other developers have done that have bought our buildings in our downtown. They buy them several years ago, get the building very cheap, get the land, and they're sitting for more than 5 years not developed. So would you rather have that happen? So someone comes along with a pile of money from Texas or something, buys the land, doesn't build anything on it, waiting to see if they can ride the market, and makes us all suffer and look at an empty lot. I mean, it kind of happened in St. Francis. The guy built all those buildings, and then the company got to one spot where they ran out of money. Those people who are paying for those very expensive apartments, yeah, they have a lake view, but there's a whole group of people that have a view of an unfinished building. So I like the idea of this would be starting and finishing something, removing something that is a blight, enriching the area in some way, and also there was some scuttlebutt in the audience about we have to think progressively for the whole city. It is about our neighborhood because we're homeowners, most of us that are here, but it's also about what's good for the city. And in the future, that forward-looking study that was done when we started on the downtown rehabilitation, I don't know if it's still posted out there. It does need to be updated a little bit, but you could see in that plan, it did call for additional different kinds of housing. And this might be one of those options. I would have personally rather seen this be a smaller scale, different type of building, condominium development like one up across from the library. But what's gonna be is what's gonna be. But I just wanted to come tonight and make sure that well, number one, got to see a picture if there was one, but then number two, just pose the other alternative that someone could buy it and tear it down and it'll sit empty, I guarantee you, because nobody will touch it, as was discussed. Or it can sit there and continue to deteriorate to the point of eventually someone will have to pay to put fencing around it because there are already pieces falling off the buildings and it's a fire hazard and it's a blight. I don't like looking at it. Having been a parishioner of it, I don't care. I don't have an attachment to buildings and things. I have an attachment to the progress of the community. So an empty building that can't be turned into something isn't really helping any of us in this room. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you make a good decision, and hopefully maybe you guys work on the building. So I think you might win some more people over if you can make it look a little less like a stack of box. So
All right, thank you. Just 2 points for clarification before the gentleman comes forward here as the next speaker, is that if the zoning change is approved, a preliminary site and building plan will be submitted to the Plan Commission, and that meeting would be held on Tuesday, January 15th at 7 p.m. here at Cudahy City Hall. That is the normal monthly meeting of the Plan Commission. That submittal, if you will, would be very similar to what Mr. Lerner submitted previously at the December Plan Commission, which was rejected. And if you remember, I said it was rejected because it didn't meet the zoning, but they recommended bringing it forward to a public hearing tonight. Those are not the final approvals on all the conceptuals, if you will, all of the materials that go forward with the final approval of how the building looks. I mean, these are renderings, if you will, of architecturals of how they're proposing to move it forward. Again, the approval at the Plan Commission, provided it goes forward with the zoning change. Again, it's more of a conceptual approval. This is the type of building he's trying to look at. Here are some of the concerns that have been brought forward by the city, by the residents of the area, if you will. Those are worked back into his plans, where at a later date, a specific plan for the building would be approved before the Plan Commission, and we would obviously make sure that the public is notified. And again, those meetings are open to the public and held here at Cudahy City Hall. So that's, again, to help educate this part of the process as this potentially moves forward. And then we'll go to the gentleman here that had come forward. Sorry to waste your time, I won't hold that against you. Please come forward. Thank you, sir.
My name's Jim Gentle. I live at 3732 East Hammond. I'm relatively new to the area. My parents moved into Cudahy. We lived down on Swift Avenue for a great deal of my life. My early life, I went to Cudahy High School. I went to school with Jim Papala. I've known Jim for a long time.
I won't hold that against you.
No, Jim's a good guy.
Class of '84.
I did have some concerns when I got here. Part of it was maybe some misinformation or just information that wasn't fully explained. I was under the impression that this was going to be a low-income housing unit. From what I've heard, some of my fears on that problem have been assuaged. I don't believe that you're bringing people in, or you're planning on bringing people in that are going to have subsidies to make their rents, which I think is a big plus. Let's face it, an apartment building like that generally looks pretty boxy. And I do have some slight concerns about the exterior look. I don't know if I have so much of a problem with the plan itself. I guess my thoughts as I sat there, people complained about the traffic and what it's going to do to the area. But I guess my question is, and having only lived here about a little over 3 years, I didn't live here when Holy Family School was going big guns in the church and things like that. I guess my question is how did the residents deal with that at that time? You had teachers for the school that had to park there. You had people coming to pick up their kids at both schools at the same time, most likely. And I think that the residents in the area probably dealt with that in a manner that, hey, we can live with this. I guess one of the things I'd like to know is if there's going to be on-site management, that you're going to have somebody there that will be dealing with the problems of the residents, whether it's maintenance problems or if there's, I'd like to think that maybe this won't put an extra burden on the police department. Has it been looked at from the fire standpoint? Does the fire department have the equipment that will reach the top floors if this is, this looks like about a 4-story building with some parking, 5 stories, I don't know. I'm sure that's one of the concerns that probably has to be addressed. Right now, I think the hospital is probably the tallest building in the city. I'm not sure.
Lakeshore Towers, but
Lakeshore Towers
to the hospital, yeah, very similar in height, if you will.
Right. Okay. So I guess I came here sort of loaded for bear tonight. Hearing and seeing some of the plans in that, I think some of my fears have been put to rest. I'm still sitting kind of on the fence on this, I don't know. But I think maybe, depending on what kind of clientele that you bring into the area, it may just, one gentleman was concerned about what kind of residents they get for renting in their rental properties, but perhaps bringing in a little higher class clientele than what we were expecting might lift the whole area. And I think that that's definitely a consideration. I'm not sure which way I'm thinking on this yet, but right now I'm not as offended by what I had heard or thought I was going to hear originally. So I think that we need to keep an open mind on this. You know, as far as, you know, the shadow that it's going to cast, is it going to be any bigger than what the church casts now as far as on the area? And if we don't do something with the area, with the facility that's on there right now, eventually it may collapse in on itself, and that won't benefit anybody. So I think that we need to give this serious consideration.
Thank you, Jim. Two answers to your question. Number one, under the weighted tax credit program, the developer stays with the development for many years, so it's not a cut and run development, if you will. So it's in Mr. Lerner's best interest and his company's best interest to stay with it and have good on-site property management so we don't have problems versus a potential developer who can cut and run and turn the project over to somebody else. That isn't the way that the Section 42 new market tax credits work. Okay, so he's in it for the long haul, his company's in it for the long haul. Your second question regarding the fire department and, you know, a plan review, if you will. Any submittal that's brought forward to the city of Cudahy that is reviewed by the Plan Commission goes through an initial review at the staff level where the building inspector, the mayor, the director of economic development and zoning, as well as the police and fire departments are involved in looking at the preliminary plans that go forward. I can't remember the specific date, but prior to Mr. Lerner coming to the Plan Commission, we took an initial look at the height of the building, and fire concerns were a part of that, if you will. And as this project goes backwards to go forwards, as I mentioned, it had to be denied to recommend it to a public hearing. And if that is favorable and this moves forward, the next plans that he submits through for the site and building plans will once again roll through that process where, again, my staff from the inspection department, police, fire will get the second kick at the cat, if you will. And once the final plans come through to the Plan Commission for the actual finals, if you will, is our third kick at the cat to address any kind of concerns. Because, for example, on a building of this size, and Michael will shake his head, but shake his head both ways, every developer does, a building this size has to be fire sprinkler. Right. Period, amen. There is no, you know, the city of Cudahy can do this. That is required, and again, that's why the fire department is involved in these buildings very early on, from the conceptuals all the way to the final, hey, these are the final buildings plans that are going forward for approval, because again, they're an integral part of that process. That building materials and the like have changed over the years, and that's why they're brought in the process sooner rather than later, like they had been years ago. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. Is there anybody else?
Yeah, I actually just brought up one question.
Sure.
Would there likely be any effect as far as, I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot of mechanicals, sewer, water that's gonna have to be changed around for this. Will that have any effect or any cost on anybody else in the neighborhood?
No.
Okay.
No. Again, and I think where he has said Mary Jo, that's Mary Jo Lang, our Director of Public Works and Engineering. Anytime we look at any kind of development, anything that is done in this community on over a 1 acre development, there are rules that are kicked in by the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewage District as well as the Department of Natural Resources that, again, I have to be built into that development, and that has been looked at on the front side. And again, as Mr. Lerner talked about, looking at the topography of the site, where it goes from, you know, high on the end to the bottom. Again, that's part of what plays into his or any other developer's design of the building, is that he could, based on the topography, based on how the water goes, based on the sewage flow out, he couldn't design a building where it was, you know, pushing things uphill where it wouldn't work, if you will. It's all part of looking at it in the initial process.